I'm Hannah, 32, and I learned the hard way that family isn't always defined by blood. 3 years ago, my parents couldn't make time for my wedding, not even a quick call. But funny how things change when success enters the picture. After my tech startup took off, I treated myself to a Porsche. One Instagram post later, my phone rang. It was Mom. We need to talk. Family meeting tomorrow. I guess a $150,000 car makes you suddenly memorable. Before I continue, let me know where you're watching from. If you've ever had family members who only showed interest after you became successful, hit that like button and subscribe. This story might feel familiar. Growing up in our middle-class neighborhood in Brookline, Massachusetts, I always felt like the odd one out in my own family. Our modest two-story colonial house was filled with academic awards and medical journals, the legacy of my parents, Thomas and Margaret Williams. Dad was a respected cardiologist at Boston Medical Center, and Mom worked as a corporate attorney. From my earliest memories, they had one vision for me: follow in their footsteps into medicine or law. The problem: I was born with color-splattered dreams and a mind that wandered toward design and creativity. While they pushed flashcards and educational toys, I begged for sketchbooks and paint sets. My bedroom walls, which they insisted remain respectable beige, became my canvas after bedtime, when I'd secretly tape up my artwork only to take it down before morning. "Hannah, art is a hobby, not a career," my mother would say whenever she caught me drawing instead of studying. "Your intelligence is a gift. Don't waste it on doodling." By middle school, the disconnect grew deeper. While other parents proudly displayed their children's artwork on refrigerators, mine would glance at my creations and ask about my math test scores instead. I learned to stop showing them my creative accomplishments. My 16th birthday stands out vividly in my memory. I'd been dropping hints for months about the professional art supplies I coveted: premium brushes, high-quality paints, a real drawing tablet. That morning, I bounded downstairs to find a neatly wrapped gift box on the kitchen table. My parents watched expectantly as I tore open the paper. Inside were 3 massive MCAT prep books and a Princeton Review medical school admissions guide. "You'll need to start preparing now if you want to get into Johns Hopkins like your father," Mom said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. I forced a thank you while fighting back tears. Later that night, my best friend Alicia snuck over with cupcakes and a set of watercolors she'd saved up for. "Your parents just don't get you," she whispered as we painted under the glow of my desk lamp. "But someday they'll see what you can do." During my junior year of high school, I started secretly applying to art schools. Every night after finishing the pre-med homework, my parents monitored I'd work on my portfolio, developing my unique style and vision. I applied to Rhode Island School of Design, my absolute dream school, along with several backup options my parents would approve of. The day my RISD acceptance letter arrived, I felt both elated and terrified. I waited until dinner to tell them, hoping that somehow seeing my genuine joy would soften the blow. It didn't. "This is ridiculous," my father exploded, throwing his napkin down. "We are not paying tens of thousands of dollars for you to get some useless art degree. You're throwing away your future," Mom added, her voice cold with disappointment. "If you choose this path, you're on your own financially." That night, through tears, I made my decision. I would take out student loans, work whatever jobs I could find, and follow my dream. When I left for college 3 months later, the goodbye was stiff and formal. My father's parting words still echo in my memory: "When you come to your senses, let us know." As I drove away in my beat-up Honda Civic, packed with everything I owned, I felt simultaneously free and abandoned. What I didn't realize then was that this pattern would repeat throughout the most important moments of my life. My early days at Rhode Island School of Design were a whirlwind of exhilaration and exhaustion. I'd never been surrounded by so many people who thought like me, who saw the world in colors and shapes and possibilities. For the first time, my creativity wasn't something to hide. It was celebrated. The financial reality, however, was harsh. My student loans covered tuition but little else. I worked 3 part-time jobs, morning shifts at a campus coffee shop, weekend hours at a local gallery, and late nights designing websites for small businesses. Some days I survived on vending machine snacks and determination. My parents called sporadically, usually on Sunday evenings. The conversations followed a predictable script. "How are your classes?" Mom would ask. "Great. I got an A on my typography project, and my professor wants to feature my work in the student showcase," I'd reply enthusiastically. A pause. "That's nice, dear. Have you considered transferring to a real university next semester? It's not too late to switch to pre-med." After several months of these calls, I started letting them go to voicemail. During my sophomore year, I met Jason at a weekend graphic design workshop. Tall, with kind eyes and a quiet confidence, he was there representing his small tech startup, looking for design collaborators. We bonded over coffee and coding, discovering a shared vision for how design could transform digital experiences. "You think differently than any designer I've met," he told me after I sketched out a user interface concept on a coffee shop napkin. "You see problems from angles most people miss." What started as professional admiration quickly blossomed into something deeper. Jason became my partner in every sense, supporting my artistic vision while challenging me to apply it practically. His own family, warm and encouraging Midwesterners, welcomed me instantly. His mother Linda called me weekly just to chat, and his father Carl showed genuine interest in my design projects. "These are incredible, Hannah," Carl said when I showed him my portfolio during their first visit. "You have a real gift." The simple validation brought me to tears later that night. My graduation ceremony arrived in a blur of final projects and all-nighters. 2 weeks before, I called my parents with a formal invitation. "I'm graduating with honors," I said, trying to keep the pleading note from my voice. "It would mean a lot if you could come." "That weekend is difficult," my mother replied after a telling pause. "Your father has an important conference and I have case preparation." I sat alone in my apartment after the call, surrounded by design awards and recognition from everyone except the 2 people whose approval I'd always craved. Jason found me there, gently took the phone from my hand, and held me while I cried. "They're missing out on knowing an amazing person," he whispered. "That's their loss, not yours." On graduation day, it was Jason's parents who cheered from the audience, who took hundreds of photos, who hosted a celebration dinner. As painful as my parents' absence was, it taught me something valuable: family can be chosen. My first job after graduation was at a small design agency in Boston. The pay was modest, but the creative freedom was invaluable. In the evenings, I began developing concepts for a mobile app that would connect freelance artists with clients needing creative work. I'd seen firsthand how many talented classmates struggled to find consistent paying projects. Jason and I moved in together, sharing a tiny apartment where our rent consumed most of our paychecks. On weekends, we'd dream about the future while eating ramen noodles at our secondhand dining table. Someday, I told him during one of these conversations, "I want to create something that changes how creative people value their work." Little did I know how soon that someday would arrive, or how it would forever alter my relationship with my parents. The idea for Art Connect started as sketches in my worn moleskin notebook, rough interface designs and user flows scribbled during lunch breaks and late nights. Jason would look over my shoulder, asking questions that pushed the concept further. What if artists could showcase time-lapse videos of their process? What if clients could filter by both style and turnaround time? Our tiny apartment transformed into an unofficial startup headquarters. The living room wall became a massive planning board covered in sticky notes and flowcharts. We'd stay up until 2 a.m., fueled by coffee and possibility, mapping out features and business models. "This could really work, Hannah," Jason said one night, his eyes bright with excitement. "But we need technical help to build a proper prototype." That's when the financial reality hit us. Good developers weren't cheap, and our savings were minimal. After much deliberation, we made a risky decision. We maxed out our credit cards to hire a talented programmer named Raj, who believed in our vision enough to work at a discounted rate. For 3 months, the 3 of us worked around the clock. I designed every screen and interaction while Jason handled the business planning and Raj brought the code to life. The day our prototype was finally ready, we celebrated with the cheapest champagne we could find, drinking from coffee mugs, because we didn't own proper glasses. With trembling hands, I dialed my parents' number. Despite everything, I wanted to share this milestone with them. "Mom, we've created something amazing," I said when she answered. "An app that connects artists with clients who need creative work. We have a meeting with investors next week." Her response was a tepid, "That's nice, dear." Then my father got on the line. "Playing with computers seems fun," he said dismissively, "but it's not a sustainable career path. There's still time to apply for the spring semester at Boston University's pre-med program." I hung up feeling deflated but more determined than ever to prove them wrong. Our first investor meeting was in a sleek downtown office that made our homemade business cards seem woefully inadequate. I wore my only professional outfit, a navy blazer from a consignment shop and slacks that I'd hemmed myself the night before. My hands shook as I connected my laptop to the projector. But the moment I started presenting our vision, something shifted. The designs spoke for themselves. The user journey made sense. The market need was clear. By the end of the hour, we had secured an initial investment of $50,000, enough to build a proper version of the app and launch it in the App Store. The next 2 years were a whirlwind of growth setbacks and small victories. We moved into a real office space, a tiny room in a co-working center, but it felt monumental. We hired 2 more developers and a marketing specialist. Each month brought more users, more projects flowing through the platform, more validation that we were onto something significant. I sent occasional updates to my parents, screenshots of the app, press mentions, user testimonials. The responses when they came at all were brief acknowledgments without real engagement. Then came our breakthrough moment. After countless pitches and rejections, we secured a major funding round of $2 million from a venture capital firm that specialized in creative economy startups. The lead investor, a woman named Sophia, specifically cited my design philosophy as what set us apart. "You've created something that respects both the artist and the client," she told me. "That balance is unique in this space." The day our user count hit 1 million, I sat alone in my office after everyone had gone home, staring at the analytics dashboard through tears. We were actually making a difference in how creative people found work. Artists were making sustainable livings through our platform. Design students were funding their education. A tech magazine profiled me as an entrepreneur to watch, featuring a full-page photo of me in our now bustling office. I mailed a copy to my parents with a handwritten note. "Thought you might like to see this. Love, Hannah." 2 weeks later, it was returned to our office address unopened. Jason proposed on a weekend trip to the Maine coastline, the place where we'd taken our first vacation together 2 years earlier. We'd spent the day hiking along rocky cliffs, and as sunset painted the ocean gold, he dropped to one knee on a secluded overlook. "You're the most brilliant, resilient person I've ever known," he said, voice breaking slightly. "Every day with you is an adventure I never want to end. Hannah, will you marry me?" The ring was perfect. Not a traditional diamond, but an emerald surrounded by tiny sapphires that reminded him of my watercolor palette. I said yes through happy tears, and for one perfect evening, I didn't think about anything but our future together. Reality returned the next morning as I stared at my phone, working up the courage to call my parents. Despite years of disappointment, some childish part of me still hoped that a milestone this significant might bridge the gap between us. "Mom, I have some news," I said when she answered. "Jason proposed yesterday and we're engaged." A beat of silence. "Well, that's nice, dear. When are you thinking of having the wedding?" "Next spring, probably. We haven't set a date yet." "Spring is busy for your father with the medical conference circuit. You might want to consider summer instead." Her response was so practical, so devoid of emotion that I almost laughed. No congratulations. No questions about the proposal. Just calendar logistics. We arranged a dinner 2 weeks later to introduce Jason to my parents. The restaurant was my mother's choice, an expensive French place where the portions were tiny and the atmosphere stiff. Jason squeezed my hand under the table as my father interrogated him about his long-term financial prospects. The app is doing well now, my father said between bites of coq au vin. But these tech bubbles always burst. What's your backup plan? With all due respect, sir, Jason replied calmly. Art Connect isn't a bubble product. We're building something sustainable that serves a real need in the creative community. My mother turned to me with a tight smile. Hannah, dear, you're not getting any younger. Have you considered what will happen if you want children? Will this little business allow you time for family? I felt my cheeks burn. Our little business just closed another funding round, Mom. We employ 27 people and have offices in Boston and Chicago now. The evening limped along, ending with awkward hugs and my mother's parting comment. Let us know when you set a date. We'll check our calendars. In the months that followed, wedding planning became a bittersweet experience. Jason's mother, Linda, threw herself into helping, researching venues, accompanying me to dress fittings, assembling invitation samples. His extended family sent thoughtful gifts and excited messages. The contrast with my own parents couldn't have been starker. I sent my mother an invitation to go wedding dress shopping, even booking an appointment at an upscale boutique near her office to make it convenient. The day before our appointment, she canceled via text. Something came up at work. Perhaps another time. One night, while addressing wedding invitations at our dining table, I broke down. Jason found me sobbing over the calligraphy pen, unable to write my parents' names on their envelope. What if they don't come? I whispered through tears. What if my own parents don't show up to my wedding? He held me close. Then we'll be surrounded by people who truly want to celebrate our love. But let's cross that bridge when we come to it. A month before the wedding, I made one final attempt. I called and specifically asked if they would attend. We'll try to make it, Hannah, my father said. But you know how unpredictable my on-call schedule can be. The day before our ceremony, I received a brief message. Unfortunately, we've had some car trouble and won't be able to make the drive tomorrow. Wishing you a nice day. Mom and Dad. That evening, my future mother-in-law found me sitting alone on the hotel balcony. Sarah from your mother's office called to wish you well, she said gently. She mentioned your parents left for their Cape House this morning. The revelation should have hurt more than it did. Instead, I felt a strange sense of clarity. This wasn't about car trouble, busy schedules, or inconvenient timing. They had simply decided once again that my life choices weren't worth supporting. Our wedding day dawned with perfect New England autumn weather. Crisp blue skies and maple trees blazing red and gold along the coastal property we'd rented. Despite the ache of my parents' absence, I refused to let it overshadow the day we'd planned so carefully. You look absolutely breathtaking, Linda said as she helped adjust my veil. She'd stepped into the role my mother should have filled, staying with me all morning, keeping me calm and focused on the joy ahead. Would you walk me down the aisle? I asked impulsively. I can't think of anyone I'd rather have beside me. Tears filled her eyes as she nodded. I would be honored, sweetheart. The ceremony beneath century-old oak trees was everything we'd dreamed. Jason's face when he first saw me walking toward him, that mixture of awe, love, and absolute certainty, is forever etched in my memory. Our vows, which we'd written ourselves, spoke of creative partnership and building a life that honored both our dreams. During the reception, Carl, Jason's father, requested the DJ play What a Wonderful World for our father-daughter dance. I hope it's not overstepping, he whispered as he led me onto the dance floor. But I want you to know that I'm proud of the remarkable woman you are. I danced through tears, feeling both the absence and presence of family in profound ways. Our wedding photographer captured frame after frame of genuine joy. Jason and me laughing as we fed each other cake friends, giving heartfelt toasts, dancing that continued well into the night. Later, scrolling through photos from the day, I realized something important. Not once had I looked around, wondering where my parents were or wishing things were different. We had created our own perfect day surrounded by people who chose to be there. For our honeymoon, we spent 2 weeks traveling through northern Italy, visiting art museums and tiny villages. Sitting at a sidewalk cafe in Florence one evening, watching the sunset paint ancient buildings gold, I made a decision. I don't want to keep chasing their approval. I told Jason, knowing he would understand who I meant. It's a game I can't win, and I'm done playing. He took my hand across the table. You deserve people who recognize your worth without conditions. When we returned home, energized and refocused, major news awaited us. Tech Creative, a leading software company in the creative tools space, had approached our board with an acquisition offer. They wanted ArtConnect's innovative platform and user base, and they wanted the founders to stay on as executives. The next month was a blur of meetings, due diligence, and intense negotiations. I discovered a strength I didn't know I possessed, standing firm on terms that protected our team and vision. The tech creative executive seemed surprised by my business acumen, clearly expecting the design person to defer to others on financial details. Hannah isn't just our creative director, Jason told them during one particularly tense meeting. She's the heart and brain behind this entire operation. You're getting her vision, and that's the most valuable asset here. When we finally signed the final papers, the numbers were staggering: $8.5 million for the acquisition, plus executive positions with competitive salaries and equity packages. After paying our investors and setting aside shares for our early employees, we were left with personal proceeds that transformed our financial reality overnight. We bought a beautiful craftsman-style home just outside the city, not ostentatious, but with a dedicated studio space for me and an office for Jason. And then, almost as an afterthought, I indulged the one material dream I'd always had: a sleek silver Porsche 911. This is the car I drew in my sketchbooks when I was 16. I told Jason during our test drive. My art teacher once asked what it represented, and I said, freedom to choose my own path. The day after we brought it home, I took a casual photo, me leaning against the car in our driveway, late afternoon sun, making everything glow golden. I posted it to Instagram with the caption, "From student loans and ramen noodles to this in 5 years. Dream big, work hard, stay true to your vision. #grateful." I didn't tag my parents, who rarely use social media anyway. The post wasn't about them or even about the car, really. It was a personal marker of how far I'd come. 24 hours later, my phone rang, with a number I rarely saw anymore. "Hannah, it's Mom. We need to talk. Family meeting tomorrow at our house. Can you make it at 2? Her tone was warm, almost eager, a stark contrast to the distant politeness I'd grown accustomed to over the years. "I suppose I can," I replied, curiosity overcoming my initial hesitation. "Is everything okay?" "Oh yes, everything's fine. We just haven't had a proper visit in so long. Your father and I were just saying how much we miss you." As I hung up, an uneasy feeling settled in my stomach. After years of indifference, what had suddenly made me worthy of a family meeting? The answer I suspected was currently parked in my garage, with a price tag north of $150,000. The drive to my parents' house the next day was a journey through memories. Each familiar street corner and neighborhood landmark triggered flashbacks. Riding my bike to the library, walking home from high school art club, leaving for college with a car full of belongings and eyes full of tears. I pulled into their driveway, the Porsche looking decidedly out of place next to my father's practical sedan. For a moment I sat watching the house where I grew up, noting how unchanged it remained. The same beige exterior, the same meticulous landscaping, the same curtains in the windows. The consistency would have been comforting if it didn't also symbolize my parents' rigid inability to change. My father opened the door before I could knock. His eyes darted immediately to the car behind me. "That's quite a vehicle," he said in place of a greeting. "German engineering. Solid choice." My mother appeared behind him, her smile unusually bright. "Hannah, look at you. So successful." She embraced me with an enthusiasm I couldn't remember experiencing since elementary school award ceremonies. The house smelled of cinnamon and coffee, and I realized she'd baked, something she only did for special occasions or when trying to impress company. The living room was immaculate family photos prominently displayed, including several of me that I was surprised they'd kept. Sit, she urged, guiding me to the formal sitting room that had always been reserved for important guests. Tell us everything about this company that bought your app thing. It was all over the business section. Our friends have been asking about you. My father settled into his armchair, studying me with new interest. The Hendersons said you're some kind of executive now, vice president of something. Chief creative officer, I corrected, accepting the coffee my mother practically thrust into my hands. I oversee all design and user experience for Tech Creative's creative marketplace division. Impressive title. He nodded. Must come with a substantial compensation package. The bluntness of his interest in my financial situation might have shocked me if I hadn't already suspected their motives. Still, I decided to see how the conversation would unfold. The work is rewarding, I replied carefully. Jason and I are fortunate to be doing well. Speaking of Jason, my mother interjected, we're so sorry we missed the wedding. That car trouble was just terrible timing. I took a slow sip of coffee to maintain my composure. Yes, especially since Sarah from your office mentioned seeing you leave for Cape Cod that morning. An awkward silence fell. My mother recovered first, jumping up to retrieve a photo album I'd never seen before. Look what I put together, all your childhood achievements. I always knew you'd make something of yourself. She flipped through pages of school certificates and award photos, narrating as if we'd always been close, as if she'd been my biggest supporter all along. My father joined in, reminiscing about college tours we'd never taken and proud parent moments that hadn't actually happened. I felt like I was participating in some bizarre alternate reality play where my parents had been recast as loving, supportive figures. The cognitive dissonance was dizzying. After about 30 minutes of this charade, my father cleared his throat. Hannah, your mother and I have been thinking about our retirement planning. And there it was. The real reason for the family meeting. Our financial advisor suggests we should diversify our investments, he continued. The market's been unpredictable lately. My mother nodded earnestly. We've worked so hard all these years. You know how dedicated your father has been to his patients, often at the expense of his own health. I remained silent watching this performance unfold. We're so proud of how successful you've become, my father said, his voice softening to a tone I rarely heard. It's important to help family when you can. That's what we always taught you, right? Did you? I asked quietly. I don't remember that lesson. The question hung in the air, momentarily disrupting their script. My mother reached over to pat my hand. Hannah, what your father is trying to say is that we could use some help. A loan, really. Just to secure our retirement. $200,000 would make all the difference. I almost laughed at the audacity. Not just the amount, but the entire premise that I owed them financial support after years of emotional abandonment. $200,000, I repeated slowly. That's a significant amount. Well, you bought that fancy car, my father pointed out. Clearly money isn't tight for you anymore. We raised you, gave you everything, my mother added. We deserve to share in your success. The word deserve cut through me like a blade. With perfect clarity, I understood that they saw me not as a daughter they loved, but as an investment they'd failed to cash in on, until now. Let me make sure I understand. I said, my voice steady despite the emotions churning inside. You couldn't attend my wedding. You never supported my education or career choices. You've been essentially absent from my life for years. But now that I have financial success, you're entitled to share in it. My father's expression hardened. That's unfair. We always had your best interests at heart. We pushed you because we wanted you to succeed. No, I corrected him. You pushed me to become what you wanted. There's a difference. My mother's eyes welled with tears that I couldn't tell were genuine or tactical. We're still your parents, Hannah. Family should help family. In that moment, I thought about what family truly meant. I thought about Linda adjusting my veil on my wedding day, about Carl dancing with me at the reception, about Jason believing in me when no one else did. "You're right," I said finally. "Family should help family. But family is also about showing up consistently, not just when you need something." The silence that followed my statement seemed to stretch for hours, though it was likely only seconds. My parents exchanged glances, a wordless communication that excluded me just as they always had. "I'm going to leave now," I said, rising from the uncomfortable formal chair that seemed to symbolize our entire relationship, proper on the outside, rigid and unyielding within. "I need some time to process this conversation." My mother's face fell. "But we haven't resolved anything about the loan." "It's not a loan I'm prepared to discuss today," I replied, gathering my purse and car keys. "Or perhaps ever given the circumstances." My father stood, his expression darkening. "After everything we've done for you, this is how you respond, with ingratitude." The accusation might once have devastated me, sent me spiraling into guilt and self-doubt. Instead, I felt a strange sense of peace. "I am grateful for the life you gave me," I said truthfully. "But I built my success despite your lack of support, not because of your guidance. That distinction matters to me even if it doesn't to you." I walked out of my childhood home feeling both heavier and lighter, burdened by the confirmation of my parents' conditional love, yet freed from any lingering hope that things might someday change on their own. In my car, I pulled over just a few blocks away, needing a moment to steady myself. I called Jason. "They wanted money," I said when he answered, tears finally breaking through my composed exterior. $200,000 for their retirement fund. That's why they suddenly remembered they had a daughter. His supportive anger on my behalf was exactly what I needed. "You don't owe them anything, Hannah. Not your success, not your money, and certainly not your peace of mind." That evening, after hours of reflection and discussion with Jason, I made a decision that felt right for me. I wouldn't completely cut ties with my parents. That level of finality didn't align with who I wanted to be. But I would establish clear, healthy boundaries. The next day, I contacted a financial advisor and arranged for a smaller gift, enough to show goodwill, but not enough to enable entitled behavior. It came with conditions: the money would be professionally managed, not given as cash, and it would be a one-time arrangement, not the beginning of ongoing support. When I presented this plan to my parents via email, their response was predictably disappointed. But they accepted the terms, perhaps realizing it was the most they would get. Over the following year, I gradually rebuilt a relationship with them, not the fantasy bond they pretended existed during our family meeting, but a real adult relationship with clear expectations and mutual respect. We began with monthly dinners, neutral territory, where conversations stayed on safe topics at first. In my professional life, I thrived in my new executive role. The creative freedom combined with organizational influence allowed me to implement initiatives I deeply believed in, including a mentorship program for young artists from disadvantaged backgrounds. The most healing project, though, was establishing a foundation that provided art therapy and business education for young creatives dealing with unsupportive family dynamics. Working with these talented individuals, I saw reflections of my younger self and the opportunity to provide the guidance I had needed. Jason and I grew stronger through all of this, our partnership deepening as we navigated success and family complexity together. When we learned we were expecting our first child, the news brought both joy and contemplation about the kind of parents we wanted to be. "I won't repeat their patterns," I promised, hand resting on my growing belly. "Our child will be loved for who they are, not what they achieve." Jason's parents embraced their upcoming grandparent status with characteristic warmth and enthusiasm. My own parents' response was muted but evolving. My mother actually offering to help decorate the nursery, a small but meaningful step toward genuine connection. Looking back on the journey from that struggling art student to who I am today, I realize that the Porsche in our garage is just an object. A beautiful machine, yes, but ultimately just a symbol. The true measure of success isn't found in material possessions or even professional achievements. Success is the freedom to define your own path. It's surrounding yourself with people who value your authentic self. It's building something meaningful that reflects your values and vision. Most importantly, I've learned that true family, whether related by blood or bound by choice, supports your dreams, not just your results. They show up for the struggles, not just the celebrations. They love you for your essence, not your assets. If my story resonates with you, I'd love to hear about your own experiences with family relationships that changed after success. How did you handle it? What boundaries did you establish? Leave a comment below and let's support each other through these complex family dynamics. And if you're currently struggling with family who doesn't support your dreams, remember that success is the best response. But define that success on your own terms, not theirs. Subscribe for more stories about navigating difficult relationships and finding your authentic path. Thank you for listening, and remember the family you choose can be every bit as meaningful as the family you're born into.